Hi, this is Kelsey Cooper, and I'm the host for Disabled Birth Stories podcast. I hope those in the disabled community can enjoy these stories of bringing beautiful babies into the world and the journey along the way. I hope this podcast helps you feel seen, heard, empowered, and capable, no matter your journey to being a parent. I hope those who are able-bodied would listen to empathize with and support their disabled family member, friend, acquaintance, or random stranger. Thank you for listening, and feel free to email me if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the podcast at disabledbirthstories@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us today. After listening to this episode, please remember to rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please also check the description for our social media links and the link to our merch store. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult your medical providers for all of your healthcare needs. Also, the views and opinions expressed by the guests are not necessarily the views and opinions of the host and vice versa. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult your medical providers for all of your healthcare needs. Also, the views and opinions expressed by the guests are not necessarily the views and opinions of the host and vice versa. Welcome to Disabled Birth Stories. I'm your host, Kelsey Cooper, and I'm here with Johnna. Hey, Johnna, can you start by introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Johnna. I'm kind of an older mom. I didn't meet David until I was about 35. And then we got married about 2 years later. So I didn't have my first baby until I was about 38. So I am an older mom, but I'm happy to be here. And I have mild cerebral palsy. I have spastic diplegia, and I've had it since birth.
Can you just explain a little bit? I know cerebral palsy affects everyone a little bit differently. So can you explain how it affects you specifically?
Specifically, I have a really hard time with balance most days. And I have quite a bit of arthritis now that I'm getting older. The thing about cerebral palsy is they treat it a lot when you're younger, and then they sort of drop you out of the system. So that's been my experience. Like, I haven't ever gone to an adult doctor that's actually familiar with cerebral palsy. Most of the time, you go to your primary care doctor and they say, "Oh, cerebral palsy," and then you kind of have to explain it to them. So I guess I could look for a specialist, but my case is mild enough where I don't need a specialist. So I kind of feel guilty about taking those resources away from other people. So
yeah, I had the same experience of, they were great when you were younger, but then it's just kind of fall off the wagon. But
yeah.
Let's see. Can we start with, I guess, going back before you were ever married or talking about marriage? Was there ever any conversation from medical professionals about like your future plans of birth or like what you could experience? Did they ever bring that up?
No, nobody ever told me that I couldn't have children or that anything about the pregnancy would be affected by my cerebral palsy, which was nice. They just treated me like a regular person. Most people, when they look at me, they assume that I've been in like a car accident or something. They don't even think about cerebral palsy at first, which is also nice, I guess. But at the same time, it's like, well, I do have it, so I kind of qualify for it, and other ways I don't. And I know that when I get older, it's going to get worse. So I'm sort of trying to plan for that now. But
and just for the listeners, so that when she says it gets worse, the brain damage, what causes cerebral palsy, doesn't get worse, but the effects and the way you cope with cerebral palsy gets worse with the way your body ages and things like that.
Correct. Yes. So my birth story was my mom was pregnant with twins, and then she miscarried my twin, and I actually survived that miscarriage. So that caused some brain damage on the left side of my brain, which affects the right side of my body. And so my entire right side of my body is weaker than my left side. And it's not really the brain damage that got worse, because I don't have that much brain damage, but the effects of the arthritis from having my pelvis be a certain way for my whole life. I've got a lot of scar tissue in my hips, and so that affects my balance. And it is going to get worse as I get older. Like, I didn't start using a cane or anything to walk until I was about 30. And now I use the cane all the time. And it's really hard for me to stand for long periods of time. So it does get worse over time. But I think it's just a side effect of the arthritis from the CP. But it's not the actual brain damage. So
If you want to go into how you found out you're pregnant, just telling him, things like that.
Okay. Well, we started trying to have a baby pretty soon after we were married, just because I was older and I didn't want to wait too long. And so as soon as we got settled, we were like, okay, we'll start trying to have a baby. And then all of a sudden I was pregnant and we weren't really planning it. And then it was a big surprise. So that was fun. And as far as telling him, he figured it out pretty early because I'm terrible at keeping secrets from him. And he was just really happy. He cried at first, and then he sort of figured it out because I stopped drinking coffee the way I normally do, because you're not supposed to have a lot of caffeine when you're pregnant. And so I switched to decaf, and that was his flag. He was like, oh, something's up. And then I actually was able to bring him the pregnancy test on Christmas Day, which was nice.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, so it was like the best Christmas gift ever. But he was really happy.
What did you expect from medical care? Like, did you have a plan as to what kind of doctor you wanted to see, or how finding a doctor, things like that?
Well, I didn't really know anyone in this area because I moved to Virginia in order to marry David. And so I grew up in California my whole life, and so did he. And then he moved to Virginia, and we didn't actually meet on Facebook until after he had moved to Virginia. So we had a long distance relationship for a long time, about a year. And then when we decided we wanted to get married is when I decided I would move to Virginia, because California is just way too expensive to live in, especially with a growing family. And so we decided that I would move to Virginia, and we actually got married in California. And then after the honeymoon, we flew back to Virginia, and I've lived here ever since we got home from our honeymoon. So I've been here almost 3 years now. And I didn't really know anyone in the area, so I was really scared about like finding a doctor because I didn't have a primary care doctor. I didn't know anybody. So I actually called the pregnancy center, like the pregnancy center here that's for crisis pregnancies. And I wasn't ever considering it a crisis pregnancy or anything like that. I was just like, where are my resources? I don't know where my resources are. So they were really helpful in that area. And they really helped us with childcare classes and baby supplies and things like that. Like, I can't say enough good things about them because they were really helpful and so friendly. And David and I were able to take our first child care class together. And it wouldn't have worked out otherwise, because David had a really weird schedule when we first got married. He was on the night shift and everything. And so we wouldn't have been able to take a pregnancy class like in the mornings because of his schedule. And so they were able to accommodate us, and we were able to take a pregnancy class like in the afternoon. And it would just helped us so much with baby supplies and information. And they got me hooked up with a doctor that actually took cash on a sliding scale, because we didn't have insurance at that point either. And so it was like, yes, I'm so like, it was the biggest blessing in the entire world for the pregnancy center. And so we're big supporters of the pregnancy center now. And they actually got vandalized not too long ago, which made us both really mad, because it was like, they've helped us so much, and there's a lot of people out there that think that pregnancy centers are terrible, terrible human beings. And it's like, no, they actually really help. So that's how I found my doctors, through the pregnancy center.
Did they ever discuss, the CP or any of that starting out?
Well, I told them that I had cerebral palsy, but they didn't treat me any differently than anyone that doesn't have cerebral palsy. So that was nice. And, they were aware that I had cerebral palsy, but they said it probably shouldn't affect the way the way I carry the baby. In fact, the cerebral palsy actually, my balance and things like that got better after I got pregnant, because I had all this weight in my pelvis now for the first time in my life, and it sort of weighted my pelvis down to the point where I could have better balance than I've ever had in my whole life, and that was nice.
Sounds nice.
I was like, thanks, Evelyn.
So, how did your pregnancy go as far as just handling pregnancy? How did your body handle it? How did you handle it, mentally or however?
Yeah, it was pretty normal as far as I can tell. I did have quite a few episodes of swollen feet and things like that, and I had to like make sure that my husband bought me these special socks and was like, you got me special socks that you can put in the freezer and put them around your ankles to make the swelling go down. And he's the sweetest husband in the whole world. And he surprised me with those one day, and I was like, oh, that was really cute. But it was pretty normal. The only thing that surprised me was they have this pregnancy hormone that you go through when you're pregnant that relaxes all of your tendons and muscles and things to make it easier for your body to grow. And that was really helpful because that helped with the arthritis not be so terribly bad. I don't know if you know this, but you can't take any kind of arthritis medication when you're trying to conceive because it can mess with your ovulation timing. And so I wasn't able to take any arthritis medication when we started trying to have kids. And that was one thing that was really surprising for me, that I was so comfortable during pregnancy. I mean, I still had pains and things like that, but it wasn't like, my arthritis got better, my balance got better. I could stand in the shower without holding onto a grab bar for the first time in my life. Like, it was amazing. So,
how did labor start? How did that all go?
It went pretty well. I was kind of nervous because my mom was coming out from California to be here for the birth, and so we had a very tight time window of when the baby should be here, and so she was here for like 3 weeks or something. But I really wanted her to have time with the baby, and so I didn't want it to go, terribly overdue. And I remember going to the doctor. I was actually due on Labor Day. It was really funny. It would have been funny if I went into labor on Labor Day, but so we went to the doctor, and they did like a membrane sweep where they sweep your membranes to sort of help the baby to realize it's time to come, and that helped. I think it was the day after that I started having contractions, but my water actually broke, so there wasn't any like really heavy contractions. It was just my husband and I went for a walk, and my water broke, and then we drove to the hospital in the middle of the day. It was like noon or something, and we drove to the hospital, and it took a while for the doctor to actually believe me that my water had broken because it was kind of a trickle. And so he tested it, and he was like, oh yeah, your water's broken, you're not leaving here. And so yeah, but it took a while for me to dilate, probably because my muscles are not used to relaxing very well. And so I was trying to dilate on my own, and that wasn't working. And then they gave me an epidural because the contractions were getting more painful. But I had like this pocket of fluid that was like blocking a lot of the contraction pain, which is really weird. But as soon as that fluid left or burst, then it was like, oh my God. And I had to get the epidural as soon as possible. And so I did get the epidural. The epidural was successful, but I was still really tense in my muscles. And so they had to give me a drug called Nubane. And it helped me to relax and get some sleep because I was there. By the time I had actually gotten to a point where I was in transition, which is where you're between 7 and 10 centimeters, it was the middle of the night, so I really had to, have some sleep. And so they gave me the Nuvain, and as soon as they gave me the Nuvain, I went from like 7 centimeters to 10 centimeters in like, I don't know, 5 minutes or something. It was crazy. My body just needed the drugs in order to be able to relax. And so as soon as I was fully dilated, then the nurse came back and was like, okay, the baby's at +2 station, which means she was really high. And so I had to push for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours or something. It was pretty crazy. But I had a doula, which was really helpful because she wasn't really there during the birthing part of it, because I told her I really wanted her there, during the actual labor, and not really, anything that I could handle on my own, because I have a really high pain tolerance. So, but she was amazing. She came and helped me push for like 5 hours, and I couldn't have pushed for that long without her help. So it was really, I'm really glad we had a doula. And yeah, it was a pretty normal birth after that. She got a little bit of jaundice, so we were in the hospital a couple of days, trying to get that under control. And then right after we got home, David and I both got COVID. She didn't get COVID, so Evelyn was fine, which was interesting. But we both had COVID. David's family had COVID right before we went into the hospital, so they weren't able to be there for the birth. So having my mom there was really, really a blessing, because David's family was sick, and mom was there for everything, and I just love her so much. She's my favorite person in the whole world, besides David, of course. But so yeah, it was pretty normal. Like, there wasn't anything, that the doctors said, your cerebral palsy is going to be affected by this or whatever. After she was born, it did take me a while to sort of adjust to how to take care of her, because I can't really carry her places. So I would put her in like an umbrella stroller and push her around the house, and that was really fun. And helpful and useful. And then if I have to lift her into places like her high chair, or like when she was really little, she used one of those little door jumper swings, and I would sit on the floor and then lift her from the floor into the swing so that I wasn't off balance, and that was really helpful. And now that she just turned 18 months, so we got her a swing, and we put out in the backyard. And I sit on the grass and then lift her from the grass for that, to get her into the swing so that I'm not off balance again, because it's really important for me to, be stable while I'm holding her so that I don't drop her. But she's the best little girl in the world, and I'm so happy.
Those are helpful tips, I think. But did you have any like other resources? Did you look into anything like for labor or birth, or other than the class you mentioned?
No, I didn't really go into any formal classes, but I did have a little bit of, because your hormones are all over the place right after you give birth, and so my poor family had to put up with it. But we got over it, and we got over it together, and yeah.
Sounds like she's doing really well, and I'm really happy for y'all.
Oh, yeah. The only thing the doctor said is that she might need speech therapy because she's not really talking yet, but we're still thinking about that. I'm going to give her a little bit more time before we invest in speech therapy, because it's usually not covered by your health insurance. So, but she's really good, and she's like a mini version of me. So it's so funny to see her, like the way that she plays is the exact same way that I used to play when I was little, and things like that. So it makes me really happy. She's like David in other ways, but in the way that she plays and the way that she looks, she's like a mini me, which is nice. So I'm always learning. Like, there's no time where I'm like, okay, I've got it all figured out, because I have to refigure everything for every stage that she hits. It's like, oh, I just had to figure it out the other day. How am I going to do this? And another thing that was really helpful for us is, we have a really small apartment. So we turned half of our bedroom into the nursery, and we have a mini crib and a dresser that works as a diaper table. And then we have a rocking chair, and they're end to end to end. So anytime I need to lift her up or hold her, I can hold onto the crib or the dresser or the rocking chair, depending on what I'm doing. And that's been really helpful because, like I said, I need stability. It works like a grab bar, except I don't have a grab bar. It's like I make my own grab bars. So, so that helps a lot. And a lot of people are like, well, why don't you have a bigger space with a big nursery and stuff? And it's like, it's not needed. I don't think it's needed, especially during the first year. You want to have the kid in the bedroom with you if you can, because they're so small, and so. But anyway, but we are looking at houses right now, so we're getting to the point where we'd like to move out to a bigger place eventually.
Well, I loved hearing the story and getting to connect with you. So thank you for coming on and allowing me to hear the story and being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to. And if you need any other interviews in the future, just let me know.
Thank you for listening, and feel free to email me if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the podcast at disabledbirthstories@gmail.com.